Today on Inside the FLX, we talk about technology in classrooms and what they might look like in another 10 years. Welcome back, guys. I'm Josh Durso, and classrooms are definitely changing. It's been widely accepted that technology is a part of the learning process, but not everyone is completely sold or on board with that idea. There are concerns, like student inclusion and student safety. However, those concerns are met with the reality that if students are not prepared and educated with tech in the K-12 environment, they risk being behind when they enter college or the workforce. My panel from the Seneca Falls Central School District helped guide us through the conversation. Amy Hibbard, principal at Elizabeth Cady Stanton Elementary School, Jodie Verkey, Director of Curriculum, Instruction, Assessment, and Professional Development, and of course, Jim Bruni, Administrator of Business Operations and Technology. We're all in studio this week. Let us know what you think in the comments below about the conversation. Do you have concerns? How do administrators in your district do explaining their philosophies on tech in the classroom? And are you worried about security, student safety, or even balance? We'll be selecting some of those comments to be part of our debrief podcast coming up, which is available on all major podcasting platforms and airs live each Friday right here on fingerlakes1.com. Enjoy the show, and I will see you right back here on the other side. All right, well, thanks for being here, guys. Obviously, this is going to be a really interesting conversation. Technology in schools. So what I want to start with is just really broad, what each of you think when you hear technology in schools. Obviously, you guys live and breathe this every day. But what initially comes to mind when you think tech in schools or tech in classrooms? Jim, we can start with you and work our way around the room.
Sure. So tech in schools or tech in classrooms, I would say the number one thing would be probably creativity. And what we can produce or our students can produce is so much more interesting and engaging, and it's nice to see where they can put some of their ideas down instead of writing an essay. You know, what they can create instead. It's kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. So that's what kind of drives me.
Jodie?
Yeah, when I think about tech in the classroom, I think about balance, right? So the philosophy in Seneca Falls is that it's not student with a device all day long, every day. It's about when is it appropriate to use technology, and that really empowers the teacher to make those decisions. So when I think about tech, so many things come to mind, but the word balance is, I think, the most important word.
Amy?
I would agree with balance. I also think about opportunity. So tech gives our students opportunities to connect with the global society and experience learning in a new way that they wouldn't have just from books or teachers. So it really takes the learning outside of the classroom and into the whole world, really.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, each of you have a different sort of role in what all of this looks like or what the day-to-day looks like. Amy, starting with you, let's just get that out of the way so our listeners and viewers know what all of you guys are doing on a daily basis in this world.
Sure. So I'm the principal at Cady Stanton Elementary School in Seneca Falls, which is the grades 3 through 5 in our building. So my primary role in technology is just supporting my teachers through a balanced approach so that students are accessing the learning objectives that they need to learn and finding ways to show what they've learned through technology.
Yep. So and my title is Director of Curriculum Instruction, Assessment, and Professional Development. So basically, I would say the big part of what my role is right now is facilitating the professional development that goes along with technology. And a lot of what that comes from is from teachers, right? So teachers who dive right in, part of our goal is to share those instructional practices with one another. So facilitating that, I think, is a big focus at this point.
Good. I think at this point for me, it would be more creating the access, right? So as a business manager and tech director, I think it's creating the access and supporting the teachers and the students as they, have access to these items.
All right, so obviously we're going to get into some of the weeds of this discussion a little bit here. What pieces of technology are sort of incorporated into a modern student's daily academic life? Or what things are or aren't included in that space?
It's a broad question. We could go everywhere with this one. I think right now, if you were to think about a normal daily student, it depends on the level. So if I'm going into Frank Knight, I could see anything between a Chromebox, a Chromebook, a iPad, right? Mm-hmm. So the technology is very vast. And obviously the activities that they do within each one of them are totally different. Mm-hmm. So that's what the student themselves can utilize individually, right, with their hands. Obviously there's other technology pieces in the classroom with smart boards and other items, but as we start to get through grades 3, 5, and up to the high school, we really focus a little bit more on the actual Chromebook and the laptops. Tries to build in a little more of the skills of typing too. That was a lost art once everybody made a switch to iPads. So I think we made an effort to start at grade 2 and 3 and really build that up using Chromebooks. But it also allows them, when they get to the middle school, high school, to be a little more independent on their work, whether they have the Chromebook themselves and they take it home. It allows them to create work at school, work with students, collaborate with teachers, and then take it home and work and collaborate at home as well.
Is typing still taught in schools, or is it gone?
Typing is taught in school, surprisingly, but
okay.
I think it went a good stretch, about a year or two, when students got into using all the iPads and the apps, which are phenomenal, but too much of the touching of the screen really does cause some issues we've seen.
So obviously this is something that's being pretty aggressively pursued across all educational settings. But what are some of the things that you guys are looking toward maybe in the next couple, 3-4 years that aren't implemented now in the tech space that will be, or that you hope to see implemented to make students' lives maybe a little easier, or maybe just a little more interactive?
Well, part, I think, Josh, of what we need to do, and we're starting to put things in place to make this happen, is to get feedback from students who have graduated from Minders Academy in terms of how ready and how prepared are they for the next step, whether that's work or if that's college. Are we putting technology in their hand and using it the right way, or equipping them with the right devices and the right programming, so that when they leave Seneca Falls or they leave Minders Academy, that they're prepared for that next level. And in doing so, it's about asking them. We're starting to put a survey into place at the end of this year with seniors saying, how prepared do you think you are? And then we'll survey them again 18 months out of high school to reevaluate that. And then 5 years out again to say, now that you're out in the real world, whatever that means for you, how prepared have you been? And what kind of a job did we do in helping you prepare for that? So getting feedback from them, I think, will help guide and help answer that question. I think that some of those answers we don't have yet because things are changing so much, right? So we just have to kind of keep our finger on the pulse to kind of know how we have to navigate and adjust based on what's changing with technology on a daily basis.
So, Amy, what does it look like for the average student who's in your school, who's encountering technology? What does it look like? What does the implementation look like? And what's the reception from those students?
Right. So this year, all of our students have a Chromebook in the classroom, so we are one-to-one in the classroom. They don't take them home with them. Students absolutely love having the Chromebooks as another tool that they can use throughout the day. So the implementation really is all about how we can engage and empower students to not only access material differently, but also to show what they know, show what they've learned in different ways. So for example, we might have stations going on. So a teacher is with a group of 5 students doing a little mini lesson. There might be another station of students on Chromebooks, and they're creating Google Slides together. So they're sharing their material and doing a collaborative creation. Where another section, there might be 5 students on their Chromebooks, and they're accessing some digital content. So they might be reviewing something that they've already learned, or perhaps enrichment for a student who's already met the learning targets who can move on to the next section. And then there's other areas that we are able to access software. Discovery education is something that we use frequently. So students are doing things like watching a virtual field trip of a museum as part of their learning content on colonial trades. So they're accessing the museum that might be on the other side of the country, but they're able to walk through virtually and answer those questions and have that learning take place.
So one of the things that popped in my mind is, does this create a scenario where the education can be a little more tailored and more opportunity for that personalization of education throughout the spectrum?
100%, yes. And not only for students' needs, but also students' interests, because we know that when students are interested and engaged, that they learn better, they learn more, and they are empowered to continue their learning. So absolutely, it makes it much more tailored to the student.
And to that end, is this technology sort of that game changer that's needed in education to really push that engagement to the next level?
We think yes, but we think very strongly in Seneca Falls that it's one piece. And Jodie talked about that balanced approach. We strongly value our teachers, their expertise, and you can't lose that piece of it. And so it's just another tool that teachers have so that students can more quickly and easily access content that they're looking for, but it's really the teacher as the facilitator who still is making that learning happen.
Does it also make it easier for students who maybe need a little extra help in one area or another to get that help maybe in a less invasive way than maybe was 10 or 15 years ago?
Absolutely, and also it gives the teacher, time to plan their lessons differently. So in the past, they might have been planning 15 different lessons for each kid that needs different things, and now they're more monitoring the students' learning through the technology and assigning, adjusting, and having little conferences with kids to make sure they're on the right track.
Josh, just to piggyback off that, not only are teachers monitoring progress, students have begun to monitor their own progress, right? So that's where the ownership piece comes in for students. When they feel like their learning is relevant and that they have some impact, right, on what they earn instead of what grade they get from a teacher, right? It's kind of changing that mindset from the teacher gave me a B or gave me a 75 to I earned it. And then what kinds of things can I put into place to maybe improve that grade? What kinds of things do I need to practice? What are the skill sets that I need to work on? So it really opens the door to conversations between the student, the teacher, and even the parent, and how we can support student growth, with the student being the center instead of the student kind of being on the side and the adults talking about the student. We are trying to bring the student into the game at a very early level so that they can learn to monitor and make adjustments to their own learning to really have that sense of ownership over what's happening.
So you've all talked a little bit about the balance of this whole thing. What are some of the traditional elements that are still, obviously textbooks, they're not dead, they're not gone, right? They're still there. Yep. What are some of those things that maybe were included in education 10, 15, 20 years ago that still are, and just because technology has come along doesn't mean that they've been pushed to the side or that they're in the dust?
I think Amy spoke to this a lot. It's about what are your learning objectives, right? Where do you want students to be able to walk away knowing that they learned? And then it's the question, and this is where the teacher becomes so valuable, how am I going to get students there? It's about the delivery of it, and does technology play a part in that at that time for that lesson? If so, great. If not, great. That's fine. Whatever it is, and it may come down to student choice in that factor, right? I may be a student who's really great on really great with technology, or really interested in researching, and Mr. Bruni might be a kid who would rather open a textbook or take a multiple choice test. So it's really about knowing your students, or allowing them to have choice in how they're either showing their learning or how the actual learning is happening. So it's another option. It's not the be all end all to anything.
But so I think you still, though, Jodie makes a good point. If we go back to a couple comments before too, when she talked about trying to help students be prepared. I think our number one goal, obviously, is, at the end of the day, is to make sure they're prepared when they leave us, whether it's for workforce or a career, college. So I think when we take a look at what area colleges are doing, what our students are doing, and preparing them for, realistically, the majority of them which are taking online courses at this point, right? So I think as a school district, we need to do our job to make sure we have that balance to provide those students the ability to learn how to take those courses online, or whether just to use the actual software or the operating system that they're using at the next level. So I think that's the next step, is to make sure that we're providing that support and that access to all the different various types of operating systems and devices and courses and online.
Is there concern around the speed at which sort of technology seems to be getting inserted into the academic setting now? Like in terms of, because I think back to just 10, 15 years ago when I was in high school, I mean, it's a night and day difference now compared to then. And I can only imagine what some of our older listeners are thinking, who maybe went to school in the 70s, 80s, or 90s. It's an entirely different world. So what do you sort of tell those folks to quell those concerns and to make them feel assured that, no, it's happening at the right speed, we're just playing a little catch up right now?
I gotta tell you, in Seneca Falls, I do feel like it's happening at the right speed. I just feel like it's the mindset, right? So it's not about any pressure, any amount of time, really, that teachers feel like kids have to be in front of a screen. It's more about, again, what's appropriate for what you're trying to do in the classroom. What's the learning that needs to happen, and how can that happen? And is technology a piece of that at that time? or is it not? And so I feel like it really comes from the culture of what your goal is, what your goal and purpose is. And our goal and purpose is to do the right thing for kids at the right time. So that's where we value our teachers. We know that our teachers are able to make those very important decisions to say, you know what, we need to balance this. And I really truly think that our teachers see it that way.
Right.
It's not about putting kids on computers all day long. We balance both of those, that face-to-face, those social skills, that building the soft skills, which comes from person-to-person interaction, as well as equipping them with the skills they need technology-wise. So it's a balance. We're asking teachers to do a lot more, right, than we've ever done before. When we went to school, well, maybe when I went to school, Josh, you're younger, but it was about you have to make eye contact, shake people's hand, be confident. All of those soft skill types of things were really at the forefront, along with the academics. So now it's academics, it's social emotional, it's technology, it's soft skills, right? So it's all encompassing, and it's a hard job.
Yeah. And you're not I think it might be worth pointing out, you're not saying that those one-on-one skills aren't important. It's just that, for example, if you're trying to get a job, you're going to have to check off 4 or 5 boxes, complete an application online, maybe exchange some emails before you even get to that interview stage where you're able to have that one-on-one interaction.
Our job is it's well-rounded, right? It's the whole child, and it's really what our goal is, which encompasses all of those things. Look, I have 2 children, and it's more important to me that they are able to communicate and they have a strong set of those soft skills, or like you said, you're not going to get in the door, right? In order to show what technology skills you have, or how you can use technology to help you be good at whatever your job is. So it's across the board, and it's just something that we really are asking teachers, and parents have it on their plate as well. It's just something as a society, I think that we have to balance out, and I think all are important, equally important, and we just have to kind of fit them in where it's appropriate. It's like a puzzle.
So getting into some of the specifics here, I feel like when we mention tech in schools, a lot of folks tend to automatically think we're talking about social media or that kind of thing. This is not that, correct? We're talking about actual academic applications used on a computer or some sort of tablet.
Correct.
To do schoolwork.
Absolutely.
Okay. So to that end, I want to just sort of, if we can, jump through a couple subjects and just sort of paint a picture of what that looks like. So maybe like an English class or a math class. What does it look like, or how is the tech incorporated into that setting?
Sure. So here's a great example. Middle school math. We have a problem on the board, right? Teacher poses a problem, different ways to solve it. Not just one way, and there's not, just one right way like maybe I learned many years ago. So get in groups, kids log on, they have Chromebooks, and there's a program called Flipgrid, right? So it's a quick video, so students work through the problem, and then with partners, they turn the camera on themselves, 15-second, 30-second video explaining their process, the mathematical process, and how they arrived at their answer. All those videos are uploaded in one spot. Kids can see each other's videos, so different explanations as to how they arrived at the answer to that problem, right? So they're learning from each other. They're learning different ways to solve that math problem using technology to do that. So that would be one example of how technology has enhanced instruction and collaboration and explanations and kind of that whole presentation mode. That's something that's important to us as well. Different pieces come into play.
Mm-hmm. Now, as I want to jump back to sort of the elementary age a little bit, what does it look like on that front compared to maybe what it does look like at that middle school or high school level?
Sure. The best example I can think of right now would be we really want to go back to like an essential question. So it's that learning target again. So I've been in a classroom recently, and the essential question was how do sports impact and influence American culture. They're getting ready for a study of Jackie Robinson and some sports and civil rights history. So that's the essential question. So the teacher has set up multiple stations that day where students are working on that essential question. So in one station, they're watching a couple of videos, logging their answers on Google Classroom so that they can compare each other's answers. In another station, they're reading some short quotes by different athletes or people in sports, and then they're responding responding similar to what Jodie mentioned on Flipgrid, what they think that quote means and how it impacts American culture. And then they're all watching those each other's Flipgrid videos and getting ideas of the quotes that they didn't see. So they might focus on 2 quotes and other kids might get the other quotes, and now they're learning a wide range of things by watching each other's video. But again, the important piece at all levels is going back to that, what's that learning target for today? So how can I then use the technology to give students a chance to access that learning target?
So one of the questions that popped up on social media before we recorded this, obviously, was how much screen time is too much screen time, and by putting this stuff in schools, are we maybe starting to push it a little too far along? How do you respond to that, and how do you sort of address that at all ages, so that isn't, we're not looking at 6, 7, 8 hours a day of total screen time for really young people?
And it's we've talked about it. It's a balance, correct? So there's certain skills that we need and we want to teach our students. That does provide them the opportunity to get in front of a screen, but that's just for that actual skill. I think we do a nice job of balancing between the soft skills and what they need to do in the classroom, along with that. But then you got to understand too, when it is time that they would require screen time. Let's say they get to the high school level, and they're working on an actual computer program, whether it's Adobe or if they're doing Photoshop, it's going to require a little bit more screen time. But it's for that skill. It's that purpose of trying to make sure we're preparing them for that, maybe that career that one child is going to be on. But when you step back and think about it, I would say no. I would say that there's a pretty good balance between, for the next 20 minutes, we're going to work on this skill. You have the ability and the choice to work on it at this device, this device, this device. And maybe there's 3 different types, or maybe work in a group on your own. So there are times where there's choices. But then we also have to step back and think, this is the new age. This is how students are learning. Students are learning from watching YouTube videos, right? They're not learning from textbook or reading books that much anymore. And I think we need to do our job to make sure we meet them at their learning level and how they learn. I think there are times if we don't do that, we could lose them. So I think it's important to make sure we reach them.
And I would assume, Jodie, that this is sort of a conversation that's active. It's happening all the time.
Oh,
You
sure.
guys are always sort of debating and trying to work through what's the right balance,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And that's where those instructional conversations come into play, right? So you have teachers who are, and Amy alluded to this a lot, and it's happening at Frank Knight as well, happens at the middle school and high school level a little bit as well, where you're having teachers kind of set classrooms up so they're not lecturing to a whole group or a whole class, that, they've broken their class down into different stations or different centers, and different things are happening, and technology may be included in part of that. But it's about balance. I don't think you would walk into any classroom in Seneca Falls and there would be kids in stations, and they would all be on devices, and a teacher wouldn't be interacting with them in some way, shape, or form. And if it was, it would be rare and hopefully very purposeful. But that's not the norm by any means, right? So it's about changing instructional practices. It's about moving kids through and exposing them to different instructional practices. We know students learn differently. So it's not one way for everybody at all times, like it used to be, more like that. So I think that's an instructional shift. Teachers are pretty much on the pathway to understanding that they are reaching their students by providing them with choice, but providing them with variety, and that's working well.
And like you guys said earlier, it's freeing the faculty and the teachers up to make more decisions on their own, correct?
Absolutely. The power's in their hands. We trust our teachers.
So to that end, let's talk a little bit about access. Obviously, not every student is going to come in with the same level of access at home to the internet, to technology, that sort of thing. So what are some of the steps that you guys take, and what are some of the things that you guys see sort of on a daily basis, especially with you, Amy? What do you guys sort of see from students, where they enter, and what some of the situations are that you guys have to reconcile with throughout the process?
Right. So we're very careful to make sure that any learning that happens with technology happens in schools, because we know that unfortunately not all our students have access at home. So that's kind of the first unwritten rule, that technology use will happen in the schools where we can provide that support and that access. The really great thing is students come in with such a different level that we really can harness the students as the experts experts, and students really like that role.
Yes,
You know, so most of the time, not only is there a student who's helping students who might not be familiar with, let's say they're typing on a Word document and they don't know how to cut and paste, or they don't know how to change the font because that's not something they have at home. It's students that are jumping in and helping them to learn that right away. So it really empowers the students, and also gives the teacher, again, that time to facilitate around the whole classroom.
And sort of carrying on from that, what are the safeguards that have to be put in place so that students are safe while they're actually using these different pieces of technology? Obviously, there's lots of concerns with the internet. It's a big, bad, dark place. But what are some of the things you guys are doing to make sure that students are there for the right reason and they're safe while they're doing it?
Correct. So I think, and even though we're talking about instructional tech, it's something that hasn't changed over the last 30 years, right? Even when you were in school, we still had internet filters, things where obviously a student would like to go somewhere and was blocked from it, right? And it's items with that we can actually, as a district, monitor where they go, and if there's something that is concerning, we can get alerted. So it doesn't change from having a desktop to a laptop to a Chromebox to a Chromebook. Nothing changes. There's still a filter. We have another third-party vendor that we use that will actually scan the Chromebooks that are out and about. It doesn't necessarily dig into everything that they're doing, but if there are some Google searches that maybe throw up a red flag, we would be notified, which is nice because that has come in handy with some students that need a little extra need that we were able to provide. It is something that also gives us, access, let's say, to files if a student lost a file, something simple like that. So it allows us to do a little bit more on the tech end. But for overall access, as Amy was talking about, I think that's one thing every town or village or school struggles with, is trying to provide that access and safe access, right, to our students. So right now we have a program. We have about 20 to 30 Chromebooks that we brought down to the Seneca Falls Library. So if students were, going home, let's say at the K-8 level, didn't have a chance to take home their Chromebook, there are abilities to sign one out down at the Seneca Falls Library. They've done a great job down there of having that access, not only for students but actually for adults in the community, which is really nice. But it's that balance of giving access but also reining in a little bit, right, and keeping track. And I think that's on us as administrators to make sure that what they're doing is safe. And if they are doing things that could be harmful to them or somebody else, then that's a way for us to step in.
And to go along with that, Mr. Bruni, part of our job is digital citizenship, right? Part of our responsibility as educators is to teach students about not only how to access material, what's safe to access, what do you do if you find something that doesn't look safe, and then how are you responsible in what you're putting out there as well. So if you're watching a school YouTube video for school and you want to comment on it, like how does that look? How do you do that? We practice, for example, at the elementary level, we do a tweeting. Of course, they're not really tweeting. They're tweeting on Post-it notes. But they're getting used to how do we put out our messages in there in a concise, acceptable format.
So my last question for you guys, and I want to get all of your takes on it, is where does this go in the next 5 to 10 years? Is it going to look dramatically different in 10 years from now the way it looks dramatically different from 10 years ago? And Amy, we can start with you and work our way around the room.
Right. Tough question. 10 years. It's hard to look that far ahead.
We wish we knew the answer to
I know.
that, right?
I think the difference, I hope that the difference will be in how students are assessed. I still think, unfortunately, in our statewide system, we have a system of paper pencil testing, and no matter what, that's always on a teacher's mind because they want their students to do their best. So I really would like to and hope that we see the change happen, where students are able to show that they can learn and what they've learned in a multitude of ways, including technology. Perhaps putting a YouTube video together to show that they understand a math process. Really, that other side of technology, showing what they learned, is where I hope we'll see us in 10 years.
Jodie?
I think that our students are evolving, and we need to help support the evolution of them and their skill set in terms of being online learners, not just online participators, but it's a whole different skill set in terms of classroom in terms of time management, discipline, right, when you're an online learner. So I think preparing them for that shift, because I think the opportunities are going to open up as time goes on, even more than they already are in terms of getting online and accessing different courses across the world. And I think that, that's a skill set that we're trying to build, but we need to do a better job as time goes on preparing our students for that.
Jim?
10 years. I actually don't think it's going to look much different. I think it's just going to be, there's going to be a little bit more opportunities out there depending on what the student's interested in. I think the biggest thing to consider is also what are the careers in 10 years from now, right? So the careers 10 years from now probably haven't even been created. So it's also keeping that end in mind of what we're trying to prepare our students for, and if there's careers in technology, what type of technology. I think online learning is going to be something that always tends to jump up and increase, and I think we do our job to balance to make sure that you understand that the instructor realistically is the one that can provide the instruction and then provide the balance with technology. But in 10 years, I just don't think that you're going to see a huge change in devices. I think if anything, you're just going to see a different type, like a smaller type, but it's just going to act the same way, at least in Seneca Falls in our classrooms.
All right. Appreciate the time, guys. Obviously,
Thanks,
always nice having you in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. Just a heads up in case you missed the setup to the program. Inside the FLX is available as a podcast on your favorite platform. That means Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google are all carrying brand new episodes. Download it today or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps new listeners find the show. And by doing so, you can help shape what we're doing here each week. Be well, and I will see you next Thursday.